Object elements in XAML are pretty much identical to tags in HTML. I mean, they're different values, but in terms of syntax, they're pretty much identical. They're an angle bracket and then a type name and an ending angle bracket. And then you have some sort of content in between them, usually. And then you have angle bracket / and the same type name to end the tag. It's opening tag and closing tag, or opening object element and closing object element. And just as with HTML, if you just have a standalone object element, you can put the slash right within the element and say it's a standalone element. Property elements in XAML, there really is an equivalent in HTML, are different in the way they look, in that they have the type name just as the object element, but then they have a dot and a property name. And the closing tag is pretty much identical in the way it's structured, and that you have a / with the type name and the property name. And generally speaking, the object elements have multiple lines between the opening object element and the closing object element, and the property element are pretty much on the same line because they're very simple, straightforward data for the most part. Although we'll see some complex properties later on where they're not. I think the best way to explain it is to just show you an example. So in the program we wrote yesterday, the button control was almost entirely created via attributes in terms of the object element, the button object element. So all these objects are between in effect the opening and the closing tag, although we don't have a visible closing tag because we use the format where we have a slash at the end of the element, so it's more or less standalone. And we can create something identical to this using property elements instead of using attributes. So if I manage to unselect that, and it's not really agreeing with me, I guess it's okay. And start with the button object element. And actually we want to highlight this and comment it out. And you can use the same technique, Control-E-C, to comment it out. But the comment in terms of XAML is going to be the angle bracket !! and the ending ! Angle bracket, rather than being a / the way it is in C#. But you use Control-E-C to comment it out and Control-E-U to uncomment it out the same way. So if we add a couple lines between our object element and our closing tag, you notice, you might think, where's the button? I don't see a button here. And in fact, the whole thing is a button because we haven't defined any properties. The button by default in the grid layout takes up the whole screen, which isn't very effective. But what we can start doing is start putting in property elements, and these would be left angle bracket button for the type name, and then to use the same properties we have at the top, content. And you notice it has IntelliSense the same way, and it creates the beginning and ending tag pretty quickly, pretty nice. And if we use the same name we had in the top, we'll say button. And then for the second property, we can say button and height, and that's an 80. And you notice it's changing in the designer at the top, the designer pane, as we type these in. Kind of nice to get that kind of instant feedback. And then do the next element property, which is horizontal alignment, and make that a left. And the next one is margin. And that's 272, comma 185, comma 0, comma 0. And you can see things are starting to change radically there. And the next property element, which is covering up the properties. Maybe I can move this down. So the next property element after margin is name, and the name is button 1. And then we have vertical alignment. Vertical alignment and horizontal alignment come up almost immediately with the VNH, and that's top. Oops. Missing the closing angle bracket. Which wound up way down there. After vertical alignment we have width. Might have made more sense if I put width and height together. And that's 80. Notice I put it in the content area between the tags. And then finally we have click, and you might think we can put button.click down here, but not so. This is the one element that can't be put down as a property element. So we're going to have to do the click up here as an attribute. Oops. I think that nicely popped up and then I lost it. Yeah, I go down to button 1 click. And now if you look at the designer, we have identical button to the one we had before, but we've translated all the attributes into property elements. So if we double click on the button in the designer and go to the code behind, why don't we actually put something that makes this make sense? Hit the M box shortcut and tab, and that creates a whole elaborate qualification that we don't actually need, so I'll just delete it. We have message box show and say something like, you did indeed click the button. And we'll save this and run it. And you see we get exactly the same thing as we had before with attributes, only this time with property elements. And I click the button and the message box pops up, and so we have kind of a primitive working program. Let's see if I can move this down so you can see the code again more. It put some error there, but I have no idea what it means. It obviously doesn't affect anything because it works. But I hope you enjoyed this video and learned a lot. I think we're really starting to get into WPF, so we can actually do something that works on a level that is practical. Well, I'll see you next video, and I'd appreciate it if you'd subscribe.